I picked up the newspaper the other day and read a story by our own Governor Butch Otter. Now, it became very clear to me as I was reading that he's lost his way. He no longer understands the issues. He no longer sees his duty and understands his responsibilities to the people of Idaho. You see, he is so busy focusing on the trees that he can't see the forest. And that is pathetic. That is weak. And it is not the type of leadership that we need here in Idaho. Now, I'm going to try to support a few of these statements, and I think in the end you will agree. And I quote from his own column. For me, and I believe for most legislators, the most important issues are education, workforce development, economic opportunity, and responsibly fulfilling the other proper roles of government within the people's means. The other roles of government within the people's means. Well, let's take a hard look at how he's done with that. President Obama brought us Obamacare. Now, nobody really wants it. Most people understand that it's wrong. And here's where Butch Otter completely fails. You see, he should have fought against it. He should have stood with Georgia and with Texas and with others who say no. You see, he should have recognized that what the president is doing is not constitutional. I challenge you, I challenge anyone to lay a finger to the constitutional article that gives the federal government the right to mandate business. I want you to point to the constitutional article that gives the federal government the right to mandate health care. And while you're at it, I would like you to point to one example of a government-run agency that is efficient, that doesn't end up being broke, that doesn't end up letting other agencies take its money and spend its money in different places. And by the way, I saw in the news the other day that $95 million has come out of Obamacare and gone to producing national sexuality standards, which are designed to be attached to Common Core. So there's $95 million that should have been used to provide health care for Americans. But no, when Butch Otter and our Idaho legislature chose to create the Idaho Healthcare Exchange, socialism won an epic victory. You see, by doing this, Idaho endorsed, sustained, supported, and emboldened President Obama, his nightmarish health care plan, and his hateful attack on the Constitution. Idaho wrung its hands and said, "We have no other choice." There was another choice. What they didn't have was resolve. How is it that Idaho doesn't understand that the federal government was created by the states, and that the states were created by the people, and that we were created by God? How is it that they don't know that each one of these creations was only endowed with a portion of the powers of the Creator, and therefore the creation is always subject to the Creator? Therefore, the federal government is subject to Idaho, and Idaho is subject to us. They didn't know that. Now, a few states do understand that, and they stepped up, and they have taken steps to nullify Obamacare. They have said, not in my state, not this unconstitutional nightmare, not here. Another quote from Butch's talk, which I found kind of interesting, is, our focus must remain on advancing practical, measured, and sustainable investment in the recommendations of my public schools task force, advancing K through career goals for workforce development, professional technical training, and higher education, and ensuring that Idaho remains a safe harbor of fiscal responsibility in a sea of government deficits and debt. Advancing K through career goals? Before the documentation was even out on Common Core, Butch Otter and Idaho Lunacy brought Common Core to Idaho. Now, Common Core is a mess. Common Core is one other place where I will challenge you to show me the constitutional article that gives the federal government the right to administer every faction of the education of our children. And I don't have time to go through each aspect of that right now, so I will just talk about one. It's the National Sexuality Standards for our children. In the leading pages of this, it states that it is designed to be a part of Common Core. It is unbelievably corrupt. It is pornographic. And it is evil. It breaks our kids into 3-year groups, and at the end of each of those 3 years, the children are required to be able to do certain things. Now, at the kindergarten level, they have to be able to define different forms of families. You know, mom and dad and kids, mom and mom, dad and dad, and other perversions. Not only do they have to define these types of families, they have to defend them. They have to express why they are as legitimate as the family which God first instituted. They would desensitize our children. They would make our children understand that gender attraction, in all of its crazy and weird and perverted forms, is okay. And in fact, as they list what they would call acceptable forms of gender attraction between a person and someone of the opposite sex is listed last. Gender only has 2 options. It is male and female. And in this crazy world, we have to stand for those things or we will lose. On Facebook, when you modify your profile now, they ask, what is your gender? And there are 50 choices. Oh, actually more than 50. So Butch talks about all that he's doing for education, and he's brought the federal government in. So that somebody in Washington can decide what my child needs to know about morality, about religion, about the proper role of sex in their lives. As the children get a little bit older, they are required to identify resources beyond their parents where they can go for sexuality issues. They are taught about Planned Parenthood. They are taught that in 14 states in our nation, a minor girl can get an abortion without telling their parents. They are taught that in the remaining states, they can get a judicial waiver, and that Planned Parenthood will help them jump through the hoops to get that, so that they can receive their abortion and not tell their parents. Now, I have a dear friend who received an abortion as a teenager, and I can tell you that it is the most hurtful regret of her life. I can tell you that she marks what would have been the birthday of that child every year, and she marks it with tears and pain. She has come to realize that she murdered her own child. And yet when she was a young teenager, those who should have helped her make a right decision led her down the wrong path. That is what Common Core does for our kids. Now, as you read through this and you see the progression from our kindergartners up to our graduates, there are 3 objectives that are very clear. The first one is they would desensitize our children and make sure that our children have the federal idea of what is moral and right and acceptable, and not their parents' idea, not God's idea, not the traditional ideas that come with their religion. The second item on the agenda is to enforce restrictions on sexually based bullying. Now, sexually based bullying are things like, I think a man should be married to a woman, not another man. That's a bullying tactic, and it must be stopped. And children that do that must be stopped, and parents that teach that must be handled. And the third item that I've touched on a little bit is to make sure that our children, our young children, especially our young girls, when they find themselves at 15 years old and pregnant and facing the possibility of speaking to their parents, the federal government wants to make sure that they have another way, an easy out, and will orchestrate and coordinate our children's efforts to take that and avoid responsibility. So Butch Otter talks about his dedication and his commitment to education. He signed Common Core into the state of Idaho before he even had an opportunity to read it. And many parts of Common Core are still not completed and are still not released to the public. We have bought into something that we do not understand. It's the old Pelosi theory. We have to sign it into law to see what it says. Not me. Not me. Now, in closing, I have been amazed that green eggs and ham keeps making the political scene. You may recall recently that Ted Cruz read Green Eggs and Ham to his children while he filibustered to defund Obamacare. I was thinking back to the days of Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. I received an email, and it started out speaking as Ken Starr, the lead investigator in that case. He said, I am Starr IR. And then he shifted to the words of Bill Clinton, that pervert who still is given power and voice in our country for reasons I will never understand. But it goes on, it says, I did not grope her in my house. I did not grope beneath her blouse. I did not grope her here or there. I did not grope her anywhere. And then Sarah Palin at the most recent CPAC brought us another version, and I like it too. But I thought, since it's becoming a national tradition, I would join in. And this would be to Butch Otter. I do not like this health exchange. You take my money, keep the change. I do not like it when you crawl, before Obama least of all. I do not like your political fodder. I do not like you, Butch Otter. I'm Lance Earl. I'll see you soon.